Most people believe something that sounds harmless, almost logical, even responsible. I'll be happy after I become rich. But that belief might be the exact reason they never get there. Because wealth doesn't create a good life. It reveals the one you already have. And if that life feels unstable now, more money won't fix it. It will amplify it. You don't have a money problem. You have a state problem. Imagine this. You wake up on a weekday morning. Your phone is already buzzing. Emails, messages, deadlines. There's tension in your chest. Not panic, just pressure. You go to work, you perform, you get paid. From the outside, everything looks fine. But internally, something feels off. You're more tired than you should be. You spend more than you planned. And you keep telling yourself, once I reach the next level, I'll finally feel better. That's where most people stay. Not because they're lazy, but because no one told them. They're playing the sequence backwards. At Rich Explained, we don't just study money. We study the invisible systems behind it. Your patterns, your habits, your emotional state. Because wealth doesn't start with numbers. It starts with how you think. And more importantly, how you feel. Money doesn't fix instability. It exposes it. If you've ever felt like you're doing everything right, but something still feels off, stay with this. This is where things start to change. Most financial advice starts with behavior. Budgeting, saving, investing. But behavior doesn't exist on its own. It's driven by psychology. And psychology is shaped by your emotional state. So the real chain looks like this: emotion to behavior to money. Not the other way around. A study from Princeton University found something interesting. After a certain income level, more money doesn't significantly increase daily happiness. But here's what people miss. Your emotional state before that income level changes how you behave. And that behavior determines how much money you make. Another long-term study, the Harvard Adult Development Study, tracked people for decades. The strongest predictor of success? Not IQ, not talent, emotional stability, and the quality of relationships. Wealth is not built in spreadsheets. It's built in emotional consistency. Think about the last bad financial decision you made. It probably didn't happen when you were calm. It happened when you were stressed, tired, trying to prove something, impulse spending, chasing trends, buying too late, selling too early. These aren't intelligence problems, they're emotional ones. Now imagine the opposite. Someone who feels stable, not overly excited, not desperate, just grounded. They don't rush decisions. They don't need instant rewards. They can wait. And over time, that alone compounds. Because the best decisions in life don't feel urgent. They feel boring. Warren Buffett made the majority of his wealth after the age of 50. Not because he suddenly became smarter, but because he stayed consistent long enough. And consistency requires emotional stability. You can't compound chaos. A stressed mind cannot build a calm fortune. People think discipline means forcing yourself, pushing harder, grinding more. But real discipline is easier when your internal state is stable. Because most people don't break discipline due to lack of knowledge. They break it because they need relief. Relief from stress, from pressure, from feeling behind. So they spend, they quit, they reset, and repeat. Here's the part no one talks about. There's a concept in behavioral economics: emotional spending. People don't spend just for utility. They spend to regulate how they feel. Bad day? Buy something. Feel insecure? Upgrade something. Feel behind? Catch up. Visually. and the cycle continues. If your peace depends on money, you will always need more money. And that is an expensive way to live. Wealth is built on delayed gratification, choosing later over now. But that's incredibly difficult if your present feels uncomfortable, because your brain will always trade the future for relief. Every time. But if your present is already stable, you don't need to escape it. You can invest. You can wait. You can think in years, not weeks. And that's where compounding starts to matter. Because time only rewards the emotionally patient. Here's something even more overlooked. Opportunities don't come from ideas. They come from people. And people respond to energy. Not just what you say, but how you show up. Someone constantly stressed, reactive, unavailable, doesn't build strong connections. But someone grounded, present, easy to work with, becomes trusted. And over time, that trust becomes access. And access changes everything. Wealth flows through people, and people trust stability. Look at long-term entrepreneurs, not one-hit wonders, but those who last decades. They're not the most intense. They're not always the fastest. They're stable, consistent, clear under pressure. Because building wealth is not a sprint of effort. It's a long game of decisions. And you cannot play a long game with a short-term mind. So here's the uncomfortable truth. Happiness is not the reward of wealth. It's the requirement for it. Because without it, you will sabotage yourself through your decisions, your habits, your relationships. You won't notice it immediately, but over time, it shows up in the results. At Rich Explained, we don't just talk about making money, we talk about the system behind it. Because wealth is not just a financial game, it's a state management game. Your external life follows your internal state. If your state is unstable, your results will be inconsistent. If your state is grounded, your actions align. And when your actions align, results compound. So instead of asking, "How do I make more money?" ask something deeper. What state am I making decisions from? Because that state is shaping everything, and most people never question it. At some point, you start to see the pattern. People who chase money aggressively often look the same after a while. Tired, restless, never quite satisfied. Not because they failed, but because they built their life around something that never settles. And then there are others. They move slower, more intentional. They don't rush decisions. They don't chase every opportunity. They don't need constant validation. And somehow, they end up with both money and peace. Not because they were lucky, but because they understood something early. That wealth without stability creates noise, but wealth built on stability creates freedom. So the question isn't how fast you can get there. It's this: when you finally have everything, will you actually be able to enjoy it? Subscribe to Rich Explained. Because here, we don't just chase wealth, we understand it.